Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, and it's good to see you today, Daniel.
Good to see you, Dr. Paul.
There's an article out of Israel which caught my attention. I found it on antiwar.com that brings up the subject of the nuclear deal with Iran. And you know, we've heard a lot of propaganda in this country, you know, why this is horrible, it's going to start World War III and all these kind of things, and a lot of fear mongering. And we've sort of, you know, taken a position that anything that would, you know, encourage communications and maybe even trade would be very good. And it looks like this is what's happening. But where this argument is getting support is interesting. It's coming not from the politicians, but from a scientific organization. And it comes from the Israeli Atomic Energy Commission. And they approach this not from a political viewpoint, and not, but more a strategic security viewpoint too, as well. And their conclusion is this does not hurt Israel. And they're not a bunch of peaceniks either. I mean, these people, you know and understand it, and they say they endorse this. It's probably not what they would call absolute perfection, but it would help Israel monitor what's going on in Iran.
And that's something you really don't see here in the debate in the U.S. is how many top Israeli security and intelligence professionals, former Mossad, head of the Mossad, Ephraim Halevi, has been on record many times talking about the deal. And as you say, he is no dove. He says Iran is a great, great threat to Israel, but nevertheless, this agreement is a step in the right direction. Ami Ayalon is the former head of the Shin Bet, which is the Israeli internal security agency, and he says this deal is the best option for Israel, and he's no dove either, but he says there's a long list of Israeli intelligence officials who are supportive of this deal. So you wouldn't really know that here in the debate, but in Israel, there is much more of a debate.
But we have talked to some former CIA agents and some current ones on occasion. That gives us a different spin, but they seem to be handicapped more in this country, you know, to get their message out. But another part of this is sort of exciting to me and should excite anybody who cares about working toward peace, and that is getting people to have economic associations. And already, it looks like the sanctions that we led the charge on and told and threatened other people, if you don't put sanctions on Iran, you're going to be punished. But already it looks like it's conceded, even though there's this debate going on here, is it going to pass and are we going to endorse it and all. But around the world, they're saying it has passed. And there are delegations over there, but I'm not sure we're really involved in this yet. But there's several other countries very much involved in wanting to talk and trade with Iran out of their own best interests.
Yeah. And the U.S. is pressuring foreign companies to not go in. We still have our sanctions, but by all effects, the sanctions are dead. Just looking over the past couple of months, the French, the British are sending their biggest delegation to Iran ever, trade delegations. The Italians in November are going. The Japanese are there this month. The Poles were there last month. Iran is sending a huge delegation to India for trade. So really, trade is taking over, peaceful commerce is taking over, and unfortunately for American companies, the U.S. government is still, you know, forcing them to stay out.
Not doing them any favor. But you know, this whole debate, which has been going on for quite a while, matter of fact, years and years, dealing with Iran, there's a lot of propaganda put out on this, especially over here, because you know our media has one story. But then again, if we think about this deal, what Netanyahu did at the United Nations to warn the people of this bomb, they're on the verge of this bomb, watch out, it may explode any minute. But you know, I wasn't disappointed that Netanyahu was knocked down a couple points because he's the one that is the most adamant, you know, in opposition to this, even though he has security people disagreeing with him, that he you know, is saying that Netanyahu is saying that you know, we still have to be careful. We can't do this. But I think that I think this idea that of Netanyahu's that come around, really he lost credibility when he started talking about an Islamic leader in 1941 talking Hitler into killing the Jews. I mean, it was a far cry. It is true. This leader had been talking to Hitler, and who knows what his position might have been. You know, the Jews and Islamists have disagreed for a long time, but this idea that he's using this in this age, and therefore, what is he doing? He's beating the drums for more hostility, and he's a negotiator for the world to come to a more sensible approach on how they treat the Palestinians.
He really, I think, has lost a lot of what little credibility he had left. You remember, even starting in the early 90s, Iran was just months away, days away from a bomb, you know, and now this gaffe about this imam, you know, even Germany had to say, no, it was us, it was us. It
was our idea.
Yeah, it's become this sort of a laughing stock, so that's probably not a bad thing.
No, I think it's good, and the frustration I have is that there's a better debate in Israel. You know, they have their shortcomings, but at least there's a better debate in Israel than we're permitted here. And politicians are especially aware of this. I can remember being on the receiving end of nasty things, like the first week I was in Congress, back when I wasn't even really a whole lot, back in 1976, into foreign policy, but it was used. It was demagoguery, and it was, making sure that you were pointed out if you were against foreign aid, you were anti-Semitic, you know, this sort of thing. So this is really pretty good news, and let's hope the trade works. I've always argued that trade with China was a great idea. I've argued for a good many years that we ought to be trading with Cuba. And so if we end up, I mean, I guess nobody, especially on the Republican side, wants us to say anything even slightly decent about Obama. But if we end up trading with Iran, if we end up trading with Cuba going back and forth, and if you look at the numbers of military personnel that were killed in the previous 8-year administration versus this one, you know, it's hard to argue that this is worse. And of course, we've complained a whole lot that Obama is deceptive. You know, he will say things, he can win the Nobel Peace Prize and all, but he's still out there going along with producing problems in Libya and Syria and all these things. But I think the most important thing has been the opening up of trade. And I remember very, very clearly when that trade was opened up. And look, when Nixon did that, he had to do it in secrecy, you know, but it happened. I think the world's better off with what we do with China. Yeah, they have lots of problems and they violate civil liberties, but do we violate civil liberties? How do we treat our truth tellers here and our whistleblowers? Not very well. So I would think that, you know, if we're looking for positive things, I think there's some positive things here.
You know, the neocons continue to control the debate about this issue in the U.S. And when you look at how they've been wrong about everything else, yet you still turn on any news show and it'll be a neocon up there as the great expert, you know, you have to wonder at what point are they going to be finally discredited. But here's the thing, with all these trade delegations, everyone sees great opportunity. Is the U.S. going to be able to tell all these countries, no, you got to back off again and isolate Iran? It's not going to work. The trade regime the sanction regime is over. It's dead.
Well, the other thing that would help us in our argument would be the recognition that even if our intentions over there were well motivated, you know, we're there for humanitarian reasons and all this. Even if that was their honest motivation, it doesn't work. You know, it's a total failure. You know, oh, they're killing Christians. We got to go in there and change their government. But if you look at it, I wish we had more stories of the countries over there when they were least involved with foreign countries. Because there are stories, there are examples. As a matter of fact, there's some examples in Iran right now. Jews live in Iran and Christians live there. And just think of how the propaganda was used against Saddam Hussein. He had a Christian in his cabinet.
As vice president, yeah.
And this whole thing, that when they're left alone, there are examples when the Christians and the Jews and the Muslims live together. But then there's always elements, and they say, well, that religion's a bad religion. All they do is preach hate and killing, which can be applied to just about every religion. But when people are given a chance, they will live together. But I think actually it's ironic, since I have strong religious beliefs, I think the answer is secular. I think the secular answer to these problems and this hatred that goes back and forth is the accepting of a universal religious principle of don't kill. You know, thou shalt not kill. Most great religions endorse that. You know, thou shalt not kill, and don't steal and don't hurt people. Then all of a sudden, oh, that means if somebody has a different religion, I'm not supposed to hurt them. I'm supposed to kill them. That's what it says. But I think that's a distortion of so much in religion. But I think the distortion by a small minority, and all religions have done that, and they provoke this kind of hostility toward a country like Iran and perpetuate it. But maybe we're seeing some breakthrough.
As you always say, trade brings peace.
There you go. And I didn't create that thought. I think I stole it from the founding fathers. You know, that the more you trade with a country, the less likely you are. You have trade crossing borders, the less likely you're going to have troops crossing the border. But I am also a believer that you can make progress, and even though the founders did a good job, I think we can even develop a better system. You know, the idea of personal liberty started with the Magna Carta, and it was ups and downs and not inclusive. But I think the understanding is that it is more inclusive. I think we certainly are a nation that thinks that liberty is a more inclusive issue than it was even when we started this country. We had slavery, you know, and these sort of things. Then we morphed into Jim Crow laws. But I think now, of course, some people don't understand this non-aggression principle, and they think the correction for the abuse in the past is using that aggressive principle by government against somebody else. No, it has to be voluntary, and we have to recognize that non-aggression means that all associations, social and commercial, are done voluntarily, and then that applies to religious principles as well. So in this sense, I certainly believe that the young people are realizing this, and they are more tolerant, and right now this cling to the hope that opening up trade with Iran will lead to much better times, not only for us, but for the whole world. Thank you very much for tuning in today to the Liberty Report, and come back soon.